Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. This is a mass unmounting and potting. These are all going in pots, mainly because they've stopped doing well on the mounts. Remember, I've had a dramatic change of environment here, and with the lack of heat, things are staying wet too long on mounts in some cases, and a lot of it is because of the type of moss these are in, which in some cases is old moss. In one case it was the native sphagnum moss, which just went into a pulp. Anyway, all these are going to get unmounted. One of these is a very rare plant, and I don't know which one it is. It's possibly that one. But I doubt if any of them have got labels. Any that have can retain them. But basically, initially, it's let's get them off the mounts. I've got an assortment of. I got these at the show on Saturday. They're a bit bigger than I want. These are the size I just cannot get. But anyway, I have an assortment of small pots. I've got my wire cutters. I've got my scissors. And I've forgotten the alcohol to sterilise the scissors. I'm dealing with multiple plants. I'll be back. Okay, first job is to get these off their mounts. I'm just going to move each one out of the way, and then I can do them one at a time. Just work on the one. And we'll start with this one. So we've already got a problem on here. This new growth that's actually a spike. That is a separate little plant there. That's a separate plant, and that's a separate plant where the new growth is failing. So let's get it off the mount. That's the initial thing to do. This is wired on relatively loosely, so we'll just chop that off. Probably going to come off very easily. I doubt if, it's not even attached. So get the mount out of the way. Right, so we should have very little roots. The moss is old. A lot of these roots have dried. And as I said, I've actually got a spike coming on there. Well, the important thing about that spike is it will identify the plant. Yeah, so we'll leave it. Now these plants were sprayed with the new systemic bug spray not that long ago. Whether they've still got scale or not, they're not covered in scale. Let's put it that way. But nonetheless, there are sheaths here, so there are places for them to hide away. That's the latest bulb, and we've got new roots starting there. That's a bonus. We probably have got new roots inside that sheath as well. So I can get that off without damaging the spike. Right, so that's a piece. Let's have a look at the piece that I'm not going to bother with that. That's rotten, it's soft, and so is that. So we won't bother with that piece, but we'll have a look at this piece. First thing we'll do is get that old leaf off and the old spike. See, the center leaf of this new growth has rotted. But luckily that rot hasn't gone right down in the plant. It's still green down there. So it hasn't gone down into the centre of the plant, but obviously it's not going to grow anymore. So where are we here then? Is this new growth? It's not very secure. It's not what I would call a happy new growth. But we will plant it up nonetheless. So we've got two pieces to go in a pot. I will need to keep pieces together. The easiest way to do that is to drop them in a pot. Not necessarily the pot they're going to go in, but it guarantees that those two plants, which are the same, stay together. So that's one. I'm pretty sure that's, by rare one, what I'm getting at is it's the, not Chrysomorphum, the other one, Orintherum, the one that was misnamed for over 100 years and has now been given a new name, which is Sotoanum, because that's the pink plant. But the plant that was misnamed, the actual genuine article, the yellow one, I do have that. And that's very difficult to come by, because everybody sells it, but they don't. They're actually selling Sotoanum. You've got an awful job to get hold of the real thing. And I've got one, and I don't want to lose it. And I'm pretty sure that was the one we've just dealt with. Now this piece here, see, this looks like live moss. It's not. It's zombie moss that's gone green, and therefore it's probably very old. Now the whole of the old part of this plant has gone, and the only good bit here is this nice strong new growth and its bulb that's behind it, and everything else is coming off. We're going to start it again. We'll start it again. Get the old zombie moss off. Now luckily there's enough roots on there for this to push on. We'll get the sheaths out of the way so that the new roots will get down into something. Oh, some of these sheaths are, this one's got scaling right down in there. That was it. The scale was in between two sheaths, so not up against the bulb, which is unusual. Right, so that's our piece. I'm just manually removing any scale I can physically see. Like I always say, if you can see them, kill them. Don't give them a chance to get away. Right, so there we have another one. Let's find another pot to pop that in. Right, now this one I know what this is. It does have a tag, but I know what it is anyway. This is my tiny twinkle, a plant that has done very, very well for many, many years and always has multiple spikes. And this year, for the first time, it's failed. Failing. It hasn't failed, it's failing. I think last year we had something like 12 new growths around the edge of the plant. And this year we've probably got nearly as many new growths, but they're tiny and they're not growing very well. And this is the reason again. Old moss. Old moss and compacted roots. Now this isn't one plant, it's several plants. And it's going to fall apart anyway as I try and get the moss off and untangle the roots. And it may well fall apart in the original pieces, but I'm looking for where there's a new growth. Now this piece here has got two new growths. Let's see how big it is. I can see where a division is. It's there. Now what have we got left? Got 1, 2, 3 new growths, and if that is one piece, that is a good piece. Whoops. Ooh, nearly. So I hadn't sterilised my scissors. I was actually nearly forgot that altogether, but it's always worth doing. On the off chance that you could spread something from one plant to another, it's not worth the risk. What I'm doing here is trying to get down to what I'm going to keep out of this little set. We've got to get the old moss off, that's for sure. It's going in a pot, so at the end of the day we don't really want the moss in the pot. I'm going to change it over and get it into a bark based plant. Be easier to look after then. Right, so although this has got some pretty old parts to it, old bulb there, like a little shriveled mess, I'm still going to keep that as a single piece. If I try and take much more off, I'm going to end up separating the pieces because they're only loosely joined together anyway. So that's one piece, we'll keep that. And what I wanted the scissors for was to get that dead leaf off. The base of a dead leaf, you can almost, if a plant has had scale, if you've got a dead leaf on it, you can almost guarantee they'll be in there. Right, so that's got 3 new pieces. Happy with that. That little piece there is not worth keeping. Now what have we got here? Little pieces, all little pieces. But at least this gets rid of a lot of the old plant, the old shriveled parts that are no use, not anymore. Right. Well, that little piece has got 2 growths that are pushing on. They're not brand new growths, they're actually growths that have tried to mature and have not succeeded because they haven't got a decent root base. But they may pull on, and if not, they'll be the basis for the next set of new growths. So not even any moss to take off there. There's hardly any roots left. But we'll keep it. And what about you? Look at those adult scale there. If they just wipe off loosely like that, then they're dead. But that doesn't mean to say they haven't already done the damage, because the adult scale, the sheath, the sort of shell, is where the eggs are. And when they hatch out, I'm not keeping that. When they hatch out, they leave it behind, and the female that was in there dies. So that's why they often wipe off very easily, because it's a dead unit. That's a bad bit, look. That bit probably missed the spray, because these are fresh. So I'm making sure those die. Yeah, that looks like a bit that may have missed the spray, because everywhere else I'm looking, they're dead. You know, they're bodies, but this bit's fresh. But again, that could have been just one that survived, and there's now hatched out. It's bad enough, but I'm not going to keep it. I'm quite happy when I've had a plant that's done well over a long period of time, and it's going downhill but not totally failed. I'm quite happy to start it again and build up to that state again, you know, from scratch. I'm quite happy to do that, because I know it's done well in the past, it should do well again. But that bit's not going to do very well, it's got no roots left. And that's the new growth, and it hasn't got new roots. No, we'll leave it. We'll stick with these, we'll stick with those pieces, and see, this piece, this is salvageable, you know, this piece. I think 2 new growths, it's got to be worth a try. Not very good roots, but we'll give that a go, because those 2 new roots are getting towards maturity. Right, so that one is Tiny Twinkle. That one I know what it is. And where did the label go? Because now that I've split the plant up, it's not recognisable again. I always knew what that one looked like on its mount, so it didn't need a tag. But now it's pieces, it might end up looking like something else. So we'll put the tag back in with that one. So that's that one. Getting some junk here now. Right, coffee time. Otherwise that'll be stone cold. Right, next let's do this little one, because this is 2 separate pieces. Each one is a new growth, and each one is going to be salvaged because that's all there is left of it. So if I discard any of this, we lose half the plant. Right, so what we've got here is a bulb, a new growth with some roots growing, actively growing, so that piece is definitely salvageable. And here we've got 2 back bulbs, and yet again a new growth with signs of new roots just starting. So that's all we've got there. So that was a nice quick one. Whatever that is. I mean, in amongst here we've got the one that's got a name, which is the one that's coming up here. This is the Siku Marguerite Kyansi Glory, and it's a twinkle crossed back with Soto Annum, so still basically a twinkle. But it was a named, registered plant, and this one has got a tag, and so we'll keep the tag with it. And then in amongst what's left here, there's the yellow twinkle, there's the red, something red, it's actually got a proper name, and the tiny twinkle we've already seen with the tag, and the cinnamon. So we've got yellow, cinnamon and red in here somewhere, plus this named one, and my rare one. So that's what's in amongst here somewhere, and as I said, there's running out of places for junk here. Now again, this looks like pieces. I mean, it's dead right through the middle there, so we'll separate it there definitely and see what comes out. So what have we got left here? What we've got left here is a new growth here, starting, a new growth there, new growth there. So we've got 3 new growths on this piece. If it will stay as a single piece and still enable me to get rid of the old dead pseudo bulbs. There's only one large pseudo bulb right in the middle, which shows the plant's capabilities and the fact that it's been going downhill, because all the other bulbs are smaller. Nothing has equalled that one. Keep this as a single piece. See, that little piece there is separate, and it's a little piece with a new growth on, but it would have no backup, but it's separate, so it's only held together by tangled roots. And we plant that up and expect it to grow. This has got a lot of scale on it, this one, so that would have been degrading it for a start. Always try and find out what type of scale you've got. If you've got the Bois Duval scale, then you will probably always have them, because they are almost impossible to eradicate without using flame or something totally destructive. They form these little masses, and in doing so they effectively produce their own protection, because their little mass gets like a waxy coat on it, which just repels liquid. So you spray it with as much as you like, it ain't going to get them, and they don't feed much. Which is, one of their survivability things. They don't feed much. So systemics, they manage to survive them. A lot of that's because our systemics are naff nowadays. They just don't do the job properly. Anyway, we've got a piece there with 2 new growths on and some backup bulbs that are not totally shriveled. and we do have some roots, so that piece will plant up. Most of these roots are dead or dying. They're not viable roots, but they may branch out given a better media. What have I done here? Phew. We put the rest of the plant on the junk pile. Luckily it was on the edge and it's still obvious because it's got new growths on. I wouldn't throw a piece like this away. Because this is a nice little piece. Three backup bulbs, 2 with leaves, and a nice strong new growth pushing on with some signs of root growth. So that's a good piece. That will grow on nicely. Dead scale all over that bulb. Scrape them off while I've got the sheath off. I can see them. They're easier to get out now than they will be when it's potted up. Right, and then the last piece. Got one new growth there. Quite a lot of old bulbs here. And the new growth's got some roots coming out, so this piece will push on okay, I suspect. Yeah, what's inside that sheath? Very suspicious looking. You get a leaf that is quite a uniform colour until it gets next to the bulb and then it's pale. That's where your scale are. All you can do is just keep at them. Never get rid of the things completely, I don't think. Not with the stuff we're allowed to have nowadays anyway. Look, that's fresh scale there. And that's dead scale, so there's a bit hit and miss what's happened with these. Anyway, moss off, signs of new roots. So, pieces. There's one left to do now. Right, that's that lot. And the tag goes in with them. So that's 2 that have got tags. One that is not a Twinkle, it's actually an Oncidium. So that's 3 plants. And then, as I said, we've got the yellow Twinkle, the cinnamon, the red one, and the tiny Twinkle, which is white. White with pale yellow. So that's what's in there, that's what's amongst that lot. It's just I'm not sure which ones are which. Well, that came off far too easy. That means this lot has got no roots. This was put in the native sphagnum moss that fundamentally didn't work. It just turned to mush and probably as such was very acidic. So what have we got here then? These pieces. Massive tangle of roots, that's for sure. With moss. Well, I've got a new growth here with a bulb behind it that I'm not sure whether it's separate or not, but it is about to be. And I know what you're all thinking. You didn't do your scissors, did you? And you'd be right. I think, quite honestly, the thought of a virus or something like that in amongst this lot is the least of my worries. And sterilising the scissors won't stop you spreading like bugs, like scale, you know, get scale on your blades and transfer them to another one. It won't stop that. But anyway, we have a nice little piece there, new growth. Any sign of any roots down in under there? It's a bit fragile, that little new growth. I don't want to go too mad at the expense of the sheaths actually breaking it away from its bulb. So we'll leave that one. But it's got a few roots. It might do okay. Then we've got another bulb with a new growth. Again, I'm going to have to cut it. God, that's tough. Solid mass. So that's just going to end up being a single bulb that has bloomed. I'm just taking the flower spike off. And so we'll end up with a single new growth and a shriveled back bulb. So that's got no strength in it whatsoever. And it's like a solid mass here. I'm going to take it off because it's attached to the back bulb, not the little shoots. The little shoot's got its little roots coming out this side, little being the optimum word. Right. And that was the, so that's rubbish. That back bulb's got scale on it. That's coming off and going. And this little new growth is attached to this little back bulb that's not actually as shriveled as the others. So this little new growth might be a little bit more successful. But there's a woody stem there that I want off. Ow. Cool. Wire had gone through the handles and dug into my hand as I squeezed the scissors. Thank you for that. Right, not much left of that little piece. So this is not a strong plant, whatever it is. I hope this isn't the rare one. Because these pieces might not make it. But we can but try. That's all we can do. Right, so that's everything off of the mounts, and we will have a potting up session when I've had a clear up and a break, and we will do them all at once. They're all going to go in the same media, and they're all just going to get plonked in pots, given a good soak, and left to their own devices. Basically, that's all I can do. So remember to sterilise these before I put them away. So I shall have a clear up and get some media sorted out, and I'll be back for the potting up section. So I'll be back in a bit. Right, welcome back. It's mixing time, and I've realised that I'm virtually out of small bark, and what's in the bottom of the bag is full of dust. There's nearly as much dust as there are bits, but nonetheless it will flush through, and I want a smaller mix. So that bit that was there was left over from the last time. I don't waste stuff. I've got stuff left over, I bag it up and then retrieve it again. But this is my small bark, and when am I going to Burnham's next? November. They'll be coming to our show at the end of October. Now it'll depend what Sarah brings with her. I'm not going to pre-order because I know I'm going to the nursery in November. And quite honestly, I've got so little repotting to do, time of year and all that, that it's not worth worrying about. I'll pick some up at the nursery. Right, that's about as much as I dare get out of there. That's a bag of dust now. Now that's nowhere near enough for what I want, so we will now have to add in some larger bark. So we'll have a mix. I'm just trying to work out. I think we've got 1, 2, 3. I've got 4. Where are they? I've got 4 pots that size, and I can see the 4 plants that are going to go in them, so that's not going to use much media at all. And then the other 2 plants will go in the larger pots that we were messing with. So I've probably mixed up too much, and I haven't finished mixing yet. I've got these grown stones to add in, recommended by a friend who swore by them and said since he started adding them in, his media stayed more open and roots seemed to be more active around them. And he said when he came to repot, you know, sort of 18 months, a year later, An awful lot of the roots were attached to the grow stones, whereas they weren't attached to pieces of bark. So he seemed to think that that was a good sign that the roots were happy about that being in the media. And then, as always, we will throw some charcoal in. And as always, I will question the reason why and not supply an answer. And I do it because others do. And sometimes you just trust people that have been doing something a really long time and have said it works okay. You know, even though I haven't been doing it a long time. But allegedly, there's no moss going in this. I'm keeping this with the ability for it to stay quite dry. Now we're going to sort. What we're going to do now is look for giant pieces, which I don't want. There won't be too many, but that this stuff has a pretty even distribution of pieces, the size, but there are some big bits in amongst it as well. Some twigs and bits and pieces like that, though we won't worry about that. Yeah, I'm happy with that. You can see all the dust that's gone in there. So all of these will have to have a good flush through, and the first time I water them after that flush through, I will get more dirt out, so be it. Right, so we'll just break off there because I want to wash my hands. I'll be back. That's better. Really do not like that charcoal ingrained in my wrinkles. Just to let you know, every time there's a break like that, I'm not necessarily only gone a couple of minutes. I started filming this late morning. It's now late afternoon. I do other things in between those little breaks. Obviously when there isn't a little break, that's continuous videoing. But this one's been done in several pieces. It's now quite late afternoon, heading towards tea time, so I decided to have some wine. And we'll try not to get any media in it. Right, so we will start simply. Obviously that pot's far too big. We want one of the little ones. And I'm hoping not to have to stake any of these. I am hoping to bury them low so that they, if necessary, they can lean against the side of the pot. We haven't got lots of good root systems to worry about. All we've got to do is get these stable and get a bit of moisture around them. And by having the slightly larger mix, I don't have to worry too much about the plant sitting on top of the media so as not to rot the base. That will just sit in there nicely. So that's one done. As I get these out, obviously they will either have a tag or they won't have a tag. Now again, that's two tiny little pieces, so tiny little pot. And go straight back in the one it's just come out of. But we do have two, so we'll try and get them to grow in opposite directions like that, so that the new growths are heading towards the edge of the pot. And then this media is merely to hold them still. And hopefully their roots will push on. No guarantee, some of these are not going to make it, I suspect. But given what they are, I mean at the show on Saturday, Lawrence had at least 3 different twinkles. He definitely had yellow and white ones. The white ones may not have been tiny twinkle like mine is, but he had some twinkles. I don't think Sarah had any, but last time I went to Burnham she had some twinkles, so they're around. So if I lose any, they can be replaced. You don't see the cinnamon one very often anymore. That used to be one of the really common ones. Everybody, you know, everybody had that one. And then it just seemed to disappear. It didn't seem to come back in any great strength. Now we've got 3 here. So we've got 3 new growths. I'm just going to bunch that up like that so that the bases are all at the same depth. And again, you just get the media to hold them in place. I do have to hold them in place before the media gets there to do its job. Whoops, missed a bit. Big gap down there. Get in there. And then hopefully there'll be just enough moisture in a mix like this to encourage some root growth. But what it won't do is keep them soggy. We are heading into winter. Now okay, these are not warm growers, but you know, they do like a little bit of heat around them in their growing season, which they're now not going to get. But I'm hoping that we've got enough of the season left. Whoops! See, now that's only a small bit of plant, but the bulbs are actually quite large on this one. So come on, decisions. What does that look like in there? Yep. It's the pot's too big. So what have I always said about a pot that's too big? Plant the plant deep. Or crock it and bring the level of the start of the media well up into the pot. But in this case, I'm going to just plant it deep. So the base of the plant will be halfway down the pot. So it's only half a pot as far as the plant's concerned. It's deep. There we go. Hopefully that will get some roots going. Right, next is refreshments. It's not bad, that one. It's dirt cheap. Right, now this one's got a tag, so we keep the tag with it. And we've got quite a few pieces here, unfortunately. We've got a big bit with a reasonable amount of roots and several new growths. We've got another one there with a new growth. Yeah, I think I'm going to push this piece to the back of the pot and then just bundle it all up together into a single lump with the bit that probably won't make it off to the side because I haven't got much going for it. And I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to plant this deep. Plant it deep in the pot, not plant it deep in media, deep in the pot. And hopefully by doing so, also with this, because it's lots of pieces, hopefully they can touch the sides and it will help keep them all upright and stop them all flopping about. And that's a big air gap down there. Now what will be good is if we come back, you know, when we head off into the growing season next year, sort of April, May time, and we can see little white roots all over the pots where they've started to grow into the growing season. But as I said, these are at the wrong stage. These new growths that we're talking about and looking at, they should be mature now. They should be pushing up spikes. And they're not, so they're late, very late. Whoops. As I did say, if it's got a tag, we'll try and keep it with the tag. And then this will be the tiny Twinkle, the other one with the tag. So, again, we've got a big piece there. New growths are around this side of it, so that goes against the back of the pot. And then the two smaller pieces can butt up against it. Like that. So the new growths are sort of quite evenly distributed. And then we'll get that down in there. Get it held in place. Tiny Twinkle. That wasn't was just going to say that wasn't a bad guess for the media. Actually, that was a lousy guess for the media. I've only used about half of it. But now that will just go in a bag. That will get kept for next time round. And if it's not right for whatever I'm going to pot next time round, it can be adjusted. Like if it needs to be a more airy mix, it can have some larger bark mixed in with it. Yeah? Yeah, if it needs some moss mixed in, it can have some moss mixed in. But none of these had moss because I don't want to try and keep these moist. Not at this time of year, having disturbed their roots and coming to the end of the growing season. I don't want them to stay moist. I want them to dry quickly and just about keep ticking over if possible. And if we get any new roots actually start, there's just enough moisture to keep them going, but not keep them wet. So that's the reason the moss got withheld this time round, because normally this mix, I would mix some moss in to help keep the moisture, you know, but I don't want to keep the moisture. Whoops. We'll do that one again, shall we? Were there two? Yes, there were. I just caught the edge there. Line of sight, boy. Look at what you're doing. Look at where things are, not where they're going. Sorry about that. Luckily, we hadn't got the flipping thing soaking wet yet. And it is just a matter of popping it back in. It's not the end of the world. Not sure this one's going to make it. Anyway, of all the ones to get disturbed, this is the one that's probably not going to make it. There's just not enough good plant left. It might, but these are the type of Oncidiums that I'm probably speaking for many, where people have had them and they've grown okay and they've gone downhill and they're reluctant to throw them away and they keep trying to rescue pieces like that. Now sometimes a rescue will take off and in 2 years' time you've got a nice healthy blooming sized plant, or 3 years' time. And then others look at it and think, I can't be bothered waiting 2 or 3 years to get that thing back to where it once was, and throw it straight in the bin. You take your choice. But some people just won't do it. You know, they won't mess about with rescues. And others will rescue everything, including those that are well beyond rescuing, and in the back of their mind they must know they're wasting their time. You're never going to get some plants back to a decent, strong plant that it once was, grown in a nursery in perfect conditions. That's the difference. You, under very rare circumstances, would be able to recreate those perfect conditions because there's too many variables. You've got correct day length, correct differential between day and night temperatures, the correct day temperature for the duration of that day length, number of light hours, the right light intensity, and trade feeds, hormones, boosters, and the other things that they can throw in the pots to get those plants like that instead of like that. Right, so that's it. That's that session done. No real lessons there, quite honestly, and no top tips. The only top tip I could add to that would be, with Oncidium types, into generics, the various things that come into Oncidium types, you do need to bear in mind that some are lower light and some are higher light. And a higher light orchid will not respond well to lower light, and a lower light orchid will not respond well to high light. So it does pay to try and find your light levels for the type of Oncidium or intergeneric you've got. And the more complex the intergeneric is, the more difficult that becomes. You can get a Brassia crossed with an old-fashioned Odontoglossum. They make some wonderful hybrids. But what have you got? A high light, warm growing, vigorous, giant plant called the Brassias, followed by a relatively slow growing, not so vigorous, quite fussy, cool growing Odontoglossum. What are you going to do with that then? Answers on postcard. It'll vary depending on which way round the cross has gone. You know, was the Brassia the seed parent or the Odontoglossum? Because that will make a difference. So, not always as easy as it sounds. Right, these are going to go and get a thorough wash, get that dust out best I can. And then they'll get left until they're dry. And then they'll get some more. Now, initially, the time it will take for those to go dry will be only a couple of days. But the gap between them getting dry will get bigger. Yeah, as that bark starts to wet in. I call it wetting in because it seems to, it's almost as though it's got a coating when it's new that refuses to absorb any moisture, and it just washes through, you know. Brilliant for a fast wet dry cycle, which is what I want at the moment. But as that bark ages, it will start to retain more moisture. And yeah, we'll see what happens with these. I don't expect amazing results, but I expect some of them to do reasonably well. One or two might take off like little rockets, but probably not till next April. And some of them might not make it. No names mentioned. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. By the way, this was filmed during Monday. I don't know when it will get posted, but it was filmed on Monday. See you next time.